All right, so today we're going to work on this Optispark. When I took this off, there was it was cylinder 4, probably shot. We had an oil leak in the front end. It leaked oil down into the Optispark, well, actually into the spark plug boot. The boot had melted, had a big hole in it, and so oil filled up that boot. When I pulled that spark plug wire off the distributor, it just, like, oil literally poured out the end. So that I tried to clean this up, some files and some sandpaper, and I trimmed down a nail file emery board and tried to see if I could clean the corrosion off, and it wasn't happening. So I threw some, the bat signal out for help from the interwebs, and everybody said, replace it. Okay, but somebody had the idea of replacing just the cap and the rotor that goes inside. And so I'm going to take this apart and do that. And I will probably just take this whole thing apart and inspect it once if I'm going that far, I might as well. It had oil in this part of it. It's very possible it has oil on the inside. And so we're going to take it all apart and clean it up. So I'll show you how to take these things apart and put them back together. So I picked this up on eBay. It's eBay. So fingers crossed, I guess. It's a whole new cap and rotor and even screws. So we'll give this a whirl. Let's see if we can figure out how to replace this. I've never done this before, so this will be interesting. So yeah, there's 4 screws here. Probably could use a power drill on this, but I never know. Okay. So yeah, there's a fair amount of carbon buildup inside this, which is not surprising. That is another thing, though, that is a problem with these. That, like, you can even see on the inside, the contacts on the inside are kind of charred up. They got like a buildup on them. There's some science and electrical wizardry that happens in this thing that I don't remotely understand, but I do understand that it creates kind of a residue, and that can foul these out. So in the end, it may not be all bad that we're replacing this to begin with. So this will replace that piece, so that way also has new contact at the end. There are 2 screws down inside here to take this off. They look like a really, really tiny torque screw. Let's see what I got here. Oh, tinier than that. I wish I could see. Okay, I guess it's a number, where are we at here? 8. So I guess it'd be a T8 Torx. I don't know what's inside here, to be honest. That looks like I guess could swivel a bit, but I'm holding the back end as still as I can, just in case. It's probably optimistic to say I could hold it where it needs to be in exact precision. Okay, so that just sits. Oh, okay. So, yep. There's a little notch here, and there's a little hole right here, and that's how you line it up. There's 2 plates in here. Be real careful. If you're not planning to take this apart, they'll move around on you. I am going to take it apart, though, just because I want to inspect the inside. And this should just come off. Huh. Well, so mine's missing. There should be a seal in here, and mine is missing. And there's some chunks of RTV in here, which would imply somebody, I don't know if you can see this, but you can see right here. There's some orange RTV. So somebody had this open before. So take that cover off. You can see how there's a lot of oil in here. I'll explain why there's so much oil in here. There's so you can see on the other side here, well, here. on the cap. It's got this vent tube. Stay right here. And it's a vacuum. I mentioned before that it's a vacuum-driven ventilation system. And it kind of sucks the moisture out. However, if there's extra moisture around it, it will act, it'll act as a vacuum. And if this isn't sealed, it'll suck stuff in, like oil, which there was a lot of it to leak. So ideally, you don't have an oil leak for it to do that, of course. But if you've got stuff on the outside of your engine, which you often do, drive in the rain, like ever, here, or snow or whatever. So you can see there's a lot of grungy oil here. If you do mess these plates up, they actually only go back one way. Well, I'm going to take them out. I'll take this one. This one's kind of the optical wheel. These little grooves on here match up with a sensor. It does some, again, sciencey magic things. Set those over here off to the side. And this had some oil on it right there. So there's oil inside this sensor, which is not ideal. So I'm going to take some contact cleaner and see if I can clean this up. So I don't know what the right way to do this is. Oh, there's some oil inside that too. Is just kind of spray it in there. And it dries really fast, but be careful because this stuff will spray out at you and go over your face. I'm going to take this outside. I'll be right back. I'm going to use a microfiber towel. I don't know if you need to. A terry cloth or a rag, like a paper towel, might work fine. Anytime I'm around sensitive parts, I'm worried about lint. And that's probably overkill, I'll admit. But for, I don't know, he's like $1 a piece. So I'll sacrifice the $1. I guess some of these different ones, depending on which model you have, if you've got like an AC Delco, this sensor is actually made by, I think, Mitsubishi, somebody in Japan. And apparently that's the better one, as you know, it's often true with Japanese stuff. But I don't know what this one is, 303. I really probably had to get some reading glasses. 3035, I think, is the part number on it, looks like on it. So I don't know what I've got. I'm not replacing that. If I got to replace that, I'm just going to replace the whole thing. The advantage of the electrical contact cleaner, what's safe for contacts, but also it like dries real fast, evaporates. It doesn't leave a lot of moisture in there for it to corrode. Also kind of gets moisture out. It is kind of pricey, so if you have some other cleanup to do, like WD-40 or something works pretty good for cleaning parts off and stuff. You can get a parts cleaner stuff, but don't use your electronic cleaner for cleaning up physical parts. It's just wasting money. This one will be real gentle. These are very thin. I would imagine they'll damage very easily, so I'm just trying to give it a little bit of cleanup. I don't think it needs a lot. I don't even know for sure what they do, if I'm totally honest. It only can go in one way. Now it looks like it can go in a bunch of different ways. And you might think there's a lot of holes on this and a lot of holes on this, but actually if you try it out, you'll see it only really goes in one way. So there's a hole here, and then there's this little notch on the other side, and those line up with these posts. You slide it in there. You see if I put it on here, I line up with that post, it doesn't line up on that post. So flip it around. Now it doesn't line up. Sorry. It still doesn't line up. So you flip it around. Now you can do this real quick here. You can just see, like, here's 3 holes, there's 3 holes, but I'm going to do it the wrong way. You really got 4 tries at it. You got it flip-flopped that way. This doesn't line up at all. You can see there's the posts. Nothing. So then you rotate it this way. line that post up, and that post lines up, and all these other holes line up. And that's all there is. So you really can't get it wrong unless you force it to be wrong. So just be patient. 2 of the holes are for your screws. And you can kind of see, like on this one, even though I cleaned it up, I don't know if you can see it, but you can see little squares here where that piece attached. And then you just want to line up the other. There's a notch. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're just going to line those holes up. So if it doesn't line up, it's not in the right spot. So you know you have holes across from each other. Those have to line up with screw holes. There you go. Same deal though. You really only have, it can go 180 degrees and flip it over 180 degrees. So you got 4 tries at it. So you got this notch here, which is where this little notch in the rotor goes. You got these notches which hold everything in place, and the 2 screw holes. So you want to keep that where it is. I am going to put those screws back in temporarily just to hold this still, just to keep the alignment. It'll come loose, but it'll flop around, but that's okay. I'm going to set this off to the side for right now. That's why I put those screws in so it won't fall apart, and then come out here and clean this one up. So this, I don't need the contact cleaner. I can just use like brake clean or carb cleaner or something like that and clean this up. So I'm gonna go do that, again, outside. So that's cleaned up. It's not perfect, but it's okay. I'm just getting all the residual oil and stuff off it. Some of the stuff that kind of got charred on there and stained, just is what it is. So this little hump here fits back over top of the connector, and this just has posts on the inside to keep it, to kind of keep it in there. It'll get held down once you bolt everything back together. So set that back off the side again. Now we got, I don't know what you call this, the outer piece, the cover. We'll call it the cover. I don't know the names. You can see there's some pretty goopy crap in here. So this I'll hit with some carb cleaner or brake cleaner or degreaser, whatever you want, whatever you got, right? Soap, or just wipe it with a rag, just clean it out. Just so it doesn't have a bunch of debris and liquid in it that's gonna get back into that system and, get you right back where you started. But since I have that stuff and it's quicker, I'm gonna go hit it with that and some compressed air and blow it out. I'll be right back. Okay, so that's cleaned up. So then now we'll go back on here, and it's supposed to seat on this ring here, and there's supposed to be a rubber gasket in here. So when you screw this back together, you screw the cap back on and everything, it pulls all that together. And there's no seal in here. So I'll put some RTV, some gasket maker, whatever you want to call it, on. If I get this back off without jacking up everything I just did. There. There. All right. Hang tight, blood. Wish I had a steadier hand with this. That would be nice too. So I'm just going to run a bead around, and I'm kind of pushing in that gap with my finger. Because normally that would be a recessed, I think it's a seal that sits in that groove. And so if I just coat the edge, it's going to push into that groove. So I need to fill the groove with RTV, unfortunately. I'm probably overkill on this. I usually am. So, some of you other guys, comment below, like if you got a better idea how to do this, or if I'm screwing this up, if I'm using way too much. It's entirely possible. kind of squeeze it down, you get your silicone to kind of squeeze out the edges. Okay, so I don't get crap everywhere. Let's take those off. So I'm gonna pull those screws back out. Where's my little screwdriver at? There it is. They weren't in tight. I just a couple threads in just to keep those little rings from coming apart. Take our new rotor, line it up so that post goes in that hole. There we go. Now this came with new screws, since those screws are pretty, this new cap anyway, came with new screws. And since those screws are pretty rusty, I'm gonna try to use the new ones. Just get that one in there. Well, that's interesting. Okay, that's stupid. That's what it is. Not interesting. Not a good sign. It came with the wrong screw. It came with one right screw and then one Phillips head, like sheet metal screw, which doesn't go anywhere in here. So that's not giving me warm and fuzzies about the quality of this cap and rotor. But we will make do. We'll use the old screws. Once you got both screws in, then tighten them down. And then we'll take the new cap. Again, just gonna line the screw holes up and put our new screws in. If you don't have a, what do you call them, E-Torx, reverse Torx? I call it reverse Torx, but I don't know what the name is, but you probably do this with a pair of vice grips or needle nose pliers or something, put these screws in and out. They're not terribly difficult to turn. And they just thread into plastic at the other end. These new screws actually also have, the old ones did not. No, just the Torx head. These have a hex head base on them, so you could put a small socket on them too. And this will also clamp that silicone together because it's screwing the entire thing together. So yeah, that's really, you know, it's gotta be real careful, but you know, take your time, be patient. This is not one of those things I often say, you know, it looks really hard, but it's not that hard. It's every bit as it's every bit as hard as it looks. But you know, if you're in a pinch and you don't have the money to buy a new one, well, take this one apart, clean it up, and see if that works for you. And maybe you can save yourself a couple $100. But just take your time, be patient, pay attention to where you're putting stuff, and you can do it. You can do it. Okay, well, it's all cleaned up. Put back together, hopefully. Put back together right. I didn't have any parts left over, so you know that's always a good sign. So the next step is to get it back in the car, but that RTV needs to set up for a little bit before I get too crazy with it. So I'm gonna leave it sit for at least a few hours and cure a little bit. It really takes 24 hours to cure fully, but since I'm not gonna be cranking on it and spilling stuff on it, hopefully, I'm gonna probably wait the full 24 hours. So I'm gonna start getting this put back together, but that's for another video. Next on this is put this back on, get plug wires replaced, put the crank the harmonic balancer back on, put the water pump back on, and gaskets and all that, and start getting this front end put back together. See if we can get this car fired up again. That'd be pretty cool. But anyway, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a little something about these things. I sure did. This is my first time ever doing this, so it was interesting to do it kind of blind. You know, I hope it gives you a little confidence. This is a little bit on the upper level side, I'll admit. Like, this isn't one of those, like, anybody can do this, just dig in. Well, that's probably true, but I totally understand why it can be a little scary. You can just replace the whole thing. They vary widely in price and in quality, but and you may have better luck with that than I did actually taking this apart and putting it back together. We'll see. But I hope, and if nothing else, as always, it gives you a little confidence to get out in your garage and get your project back on the road. So thanks for watching. Hit the like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time we get this back together.